Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about dungeon masters and how they are like fine artists, people who create fine art. So this weekend I was blessed to go to the Rittenhouse Square Fine Arts Festival. I brought my college-age daughter. She is an artist, and specifically she's a painter. Right now she works mostly in acrylics, but a lot of, and one of the things that was really neat about the Rittenhouse Square Fine Art Festival was just all the wonderful mediums we got to see. By the way, I live in the suburbs of Philadelphia, and we went into Philadelphia to see this festival. Rittenhouse Square is a beautiful historic park within Philadelphia. It's really, really nice, and Benjamin Franklin and George Washington and a whole bunch of other people, did their thing there. This is all historic ground. So it's a very, very nice, we had a beautiful day for it. It was really, really nice. We just had a wonderful time. So when I was there, though, it really kind of blew my mind just looking at all these fine artists. And so let me talk a little bit about the Rittenhouse Square Fine Arts Festival. So it was very unusual. It was outdoors, right? And so it was probably about 50 different booths, each of fine art. Each was a fine artist showing their paintings, and those paintings could be purchased. Okay, this festival only allowed original art in it, so no prints. So when we went there, I gave my daughter a $20 bill, and I said, "Hey, you can buy." Right before we got there, I was like, "Get whatever you want today," and it was like throwing a deck chair off of the Titanic, in that nothing we saw could be purchased for $20, not even remotely. Everything, literally paintings, oil paintings, which were like 4 inches by 4 inches, not exaggerating there, $300 up. And the most expensive, so everything we saw, I would say the average price was about $4,500 for a painting. And we saw material from as low as $300 all the way up to $28,000 for one painting. So these were gorgeous, beautiful paintings, all professional grade artists, right? So when I was looking at these artists, each one, I saw, dozens of fine artists, and I saw how they all approached exactly the same task. And as I viewed them, I realized we as dungeon masters really make the same choices that these fine artists do, right? So when I was looking at these fine artists, I realized that they were making 4 distinct choices for process, right? And those 4 choices were palette, medium, selling, and fixtures. Okay, so I'll talk about the fixtures first, right? The fixtures here's a good example. Each one of them had a booth. Okay, now the festival supplied kind of a little bit of a tent, right? But every single artist had brought their own gear, so they had a chair that they sat on, and they had little walls that they could pin their paintings to, and they might use hooks with slats, or they might have like a burlap and they would pin their art to it, so they had these fixtures, and some of them were very professional. They could set it up very quickly, they could take it down very quickly. They had expensive high-end fixtures, right? And then some of them you could tell they had literally just thrown everything into a van and just gotten there, and they're able to set up a little bit, right? Or get there and get everything set, right? So with fixtures, for dungeon masters, our fixtures are the physical environments for our games. So I would say that the worst fixtures for a Dungeons and Dragons game is an online game. It's absolutely the worst. It causes, it physically distances people, right? And I believe that Gary, he built this game to bring people together, right? So and now I will say this: there were artists there who you could tell that they just barely made it to the show and were able to put their art up, and they did not do a good job with their fixtures. But they were there, and they were presenting their wares, and you could see their art, right? So that's great. And I think the online games are the same thing. An online game is better than not playing, right? The next I would say is a game shop. Go into a game shop. You have your own. You have some space where you can do your game. You have a table. Everybody's there. You can get some snacks. You can buy some snacks from the shop if you want. It's nice. It's very nice, right? And then most ideal, and one of the reasons why I'm even mentioning this is not everybody has the same ability to do these different things, right? And so the last one is, and this is what I do with my home game. I have it in my home. I'm blessed to own my own house, and I have a really nice space. I use two 6 by 2 foot tables, which can fit up to 6 players, and I usually do 4 or 5, so people have a little bit of extra space. Then I have my own table that I set up, and those tables are put up against a 48-inch big screen television. I use a laptop, and I'm wireless. I have a keyboard, and I have Bluetooth so that I'm actually projecting my laptop to the big screen, and I actually it's a pretty. I've invested some money. I have a really nice setup. There's no external noise. It's pretty ideal, and I'm very blessed to have reached that point where I can do that, right? And so I would say that that's the best fixtures you can do. And actually I know there are people who've gone way beyond me with custom tables and just really, really high end fixtures, right? So that's the first selection, right? Now, why am I talking about this? Why am I talking about, okay, here's a fine artist, here's their fixtures, what's our equivalent to fixtures? Here's why. I think a lot of dungeon masters, and I've done this too, we get into these games and we stop making choices. We make assumptions and we think that what we did before is fine and we're going to do that again. But every single one of these things, your palette, your fixture, your selling, your medium, they're all choices, right? And if you are not thinking about how you're doing this with each session, with each campaign, then you have a problem, and your game is going to stagnate, and it's not going to do great, okay? So I just wanted to talk about that, where I think that's really important, okay? All right, so let's talk about medium, all right? So your medium is your chosen game, right? So if you use Blades in the Dark, you're going to have some indie tabletop role-playing game rules, and you're going to have the most beautiful steampunk setting that is possible, right? If you use GURPS, you're going to have a really flexible system, and you're going to have a really flexible system. You're going to have terrible art in your book, which is going to make it harder for you to get players. Like each game comes with its own unique. That's your medium. That's what that is your oils or your acrylics. So, I'll just talk about some of the mediums that I actually saw when I was there, right? I saw watercolors and oils and acrylics. We saw a pen, like people, using pen, all kinds of charcoal, right? All kinds of different mediums, right? And so the game that you choose is your medium, and it highly impacts the quality of the game that you are bringing for your players, okay? All right, I want to talk about Pallet. Oh, yeah. So this really blew my mind. I really didn't really understand this until I saw 50 fine artists crammed together on 4 blocks of the Philadelphia streets, right? Each fine artist, and you as a dungeon master, has a palette, okay? Now, for the fine artists, these are the colors they're choosing to use. Now, there are well over 16 million unique individual colors, right? And what I realized is, and you could see this so clearly when you looked at these fine artists together, really what's happening is they all have their own palette, right? So they might use like a high blue, like a sky blue. They might use a mustard yellow, and they might use a blood red, okay? Now they're going to mix those a little bit. You'll have a little bit of variation in these colors, but you could see, man, every fine artist has their own unique palette, right? And we, as dungeon masters, have our own unique palette, the colors we are choosing to paint with, okay? Now, what is that, right? All right, well, if your medium is the game you are choosing to run with, right? Whether that's DC Adventures or whether that's Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, right? Now, that's your medium, okay? But what is your palette? As a dungeon master, here's your palette, okay? Your palette is how you populate your world, right? So one of the things I realized, right? I saw some artists who never used red. There was not a spot of red in any of their work, right? So one of the things I do as a game master is I never use monsters. I don't want to say never. I very, very rarely use monsters. And the reason why is, to me, the most deadly monster on Earth is a humanoid. And really, the most deadly monster is a human. They are just so vicious and cruel and capable and cunning. You know, like a beholder. Who gives a rat's about a beholder, man? I'm telling you, a cunning human villain can be 10 times worse than 3 beholders. I'm convinced of that, right? And so I don't really use monsters in my game that much. And the reason why is I'm focused on humans, right? And also humanoids, right? So that's part of my palette. Now, one of the other things is mounts. I was like so excited about mounts, right? And so every game in every world, all the settings I have these really luxurious mounts, right? Like mounts that are really highly detailed. And that's another thing, is I never touch mounts. I never, ever have a non-player character shoot a horse, or, like maybe rarely. But the reality is they're pretty much untouchable. So that if you buy if I have a player character in one of my Dungeons & Dragons games might spend 600 gold on a saddle, right? And the reason why is they know that I think mounts are awesome, and I want my player characters to name their horse, and I want those characters to know what type of apple their horse eats. That's part of my palette, right? Now, the last part is selling. Oh, this was it's so cool. Got to see how these fine artists sold, right? Some fine artists just sat there and let people look at their stuff, and they never talked to any of the people that were looking at their pieces, right? And actually, this worked for some of them because their art was so strong they didn't need to, right? The work, sold itself. Others, they should have been doing a lot more selling. There were other people, would look and they would say, hey, what do you think? And they would ask you about the art, right? The fine artists would ask you about the art, or they would say, is there a particular piece you like? And they would tell you about, so they were selling, right? And one of the things and then the other thing that was sad was I saw some artists who, I had the money to purchase some of the pieces that I saw, right? But almost a lot of art, I stood there with a lot of people who were buying art, and I could tell there were certain artists who would choose players who distinctly did not. There were fine artists who chose people who they thought, okay, this guy has $200 shoes, he's going to buy my art. And so they would talk to them, right? Now, I do not own $200 shoes, but I could buy a $600 painting, so kind of interesting, and so it was really interesting to see how they sold, right? Now, to us, what does it mean for a dungeon master to sell, right? Well, this is the players you choose. And this is kind of crazy. I realized this, okay? This blew my mind. I had to come to this realization, right? So I think a lot of dungeon masters don't understand that they actually choose their players. They choose every single person who's at that table, okay? And a lot of game masters just go, oh, whatever friends I have, those are going to be the ones who are willing to play. Those are my players, right? That is the lowest form of selling there is, right? That's where a lot of dungeon masters are at. It's just what it is, right? There are other people, and this is terrible, but I recently, the players who are sitting at my tables, it's starting to change. It's really starting to change a lot. And the reason why is I'm blessed to be connected with some amazing gaming networks. And the quality of my players just keeps rising and rising and rising, right? And one of the things I recently did was I took a friend and I removed them from my game. You know, it's just like, it's crazy. But I realize I choose who's at my table now. There aren't really that many seats. And I just think it's important that as Dungeon Masters, we realize we choose who's at our table, right? And one of the things that blew my mind, too, that just recently happened is I have gone full circle all the way out to where, you know, I started by gaming with my friends. And then there was a period where I was like, you're my friend, but I'm not going to game with you anymore. I mean, that was a very strange, weird thing that happened. And the reason why is I care very deeply about tabletop role-playing games. And I have more friends than can fit around the table, you know, and it's really strange. But something new just happened, and I want to call it out because I think some of you guys might start getting there too, right? I am now gaming with people who are not my friends, right? And the reason why is because they're incredibly talented tabletop role-playing games. I realized this the other day. I got a guy in my game right now who is not one of my friends. Now, the reality is I think we're, you know, I brought this person in because I saw them role-playing in a game that I was in. We didn't know each other, right? But we were both in the same tabletop role-playing game. And then the next time I came up with a new campaign, and remember, I say that all campaigns should be 3, 5, or 7 sessions. Well, I said, okay, hey, that guy is an amazing tabletop role-playing game. I want to tell the best, most, you know, elaborate stories possible through tabletop role-playing games. This guy is not my friend, but I'm going to put him on the invite, and I'm going to bring him into my game, right? And now I have people who are in my tabletop role-playing games who are not my friends, which is like, that's just like, you know, and that came because, you know, I love tabletop role-playing games so much, I'm trying to pursue it at its highest level. And I'm just calling it out for you guys because I just want you to be aware, as Dungeon Masters, you 100% choose every player who's at your table, right? Now, I've talked about pallets and medium and fixture and selling, okay? You, as a game master, choose your fixtures, you choose your selling approach, you choose your pallet, and you choose your medium. And by being aware of this and making very conscious, careful, wise choices, we can make our games better. Thank you.